I started off as a solo tutor, but then I eventually grew my tutoring team to over 30 tutors, and we looked after 200 students privately at Lisa Study Guides, my private tutoring business. So if you're a tutor who has built a successful business up till now, you're a solo tutor, and so you're offering your tutoring services to these students, you're booked out, you're realizing that although success is great, you're more burnt out than ever because you're running around like a headless chook, servicing all of the tutoring sessions themselves. You're running around doing all the admin for your tutoring business, like issuing invoices and collecting overdue payments or tracking all the bank transfers from your students. And on top of that, you're managing life itself, whether it be a 9 to 5 that you're doing, maybe you're a teacher, or you're at uni trying to balance uni workload. Then this video is for you if you're realizing that, hang on a minute, I don't think I can do all of this all on my own anymore. I've got more students coming through the door, more students that are getting referred to me, or maybe you've even got a wait list of students. And so you're feeling bad that you can't actually help them as well. And so maybe it's time for you to start thinking about hiring a tutor, because one of the ways for you to scale this business is to hire a team of people who can tutor just like you so that you can continue to scale the number of students you have on board. Now, this is how I grew out of being a solo tutor of my tutoring business. I grew Lisa Study Guides to making millions, and I successfully exited the business last year. And now what I do on this channel is help people follow in my footpath. And so if you're a tutor that is looking to grow your tutoring business as well, I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel, because every week, at least I'm trying to every week, drop tangible advice and mindset shifts that you need to make in order for you to successfully grow your business for the long haul. Now, when you realize that you're ready to hire talent for your business, there are key mindset shifts that you need to make in order to successfully find great talent for your business. Because if you don't overcome some of these mindsets, then you're not going to be able to push past them to be able to see who is actually going to be a good fit for your business. So the first mindset shift is that a lot of us have built our business up to the point where it currently is because of us. And so what happens is that people start to come to us and they request us specifically as the tutor. So I want Lisa to be my tutor. I want you to be my tutor. I heard that you're amazing. You're helping a friend of mine. My coworker has a child who's coming to you and they said that you're amazing. Can you please tutor me? And so after we constantly get these type of referrals, we start to believe that we are the core of the business. And to some extent, that is true. But you need to be able to start letting this go in order for you to believe that you can hire tutors that will be able to do the work just as well as you, and if not, even better than you. Yes, the second mindset shift that needs to be made is that you have to recognize that although it's been amazing that you've been able to build the business up to where it is, doesn't mean that you're the best tutor out there. A lot of us sort of grow in terms of our ego because, of course, like you're the one who's done all the hard work to get the business to where it is right now. But I promise you, once you're able to learn how to hire great talent, you might actually find tutors who are even better than you at what you do. And that's actually our goal when we start hiring a team. You've probably heard the saying, you want to be the dumbest person in the room. If you're the smartest person, then you're probably in the wrong room, because you want to be able to leverage and learn from the people around you. A similar thread of thinking goes with hiring tutors. You want to try to find people who might actually have strengths in areas that you don't have. And when you think about building a team, when you've got varied skill sets and strengths, think about the number of people you can possibly service as a result. Because if you have a student who comes in and let's say they're dyslexic, and you don't actually have that much personal experience with teaching dyslexic students, but if you're able to find a tutor who not only can teach the same subjects and year levels as you can, but for whatever reason, they actually have experience in teaching dyslexia, that's already a big win for you and your tutoring team. Now, the third mindset shift is nerves when it comes to hiring tutors, hiring people that you might know, hiring people that you might not be able to trust, hiring people that are going to represent your company that aren't you. And so if you're feeling this anxiety when it comes to hiring tutors, something that can alleviate that pressure is recognizing that it is a two-way street. Yes, you're going to look for great talent and they need to bring their skill set to the table, but it's also on you to train those tutors, to train them in a way where they actually represent your company in a way that you're happy with. They show up to their tutoring sessions in a way that you're also happy with. And so here we're talking about standardizing your processes, which we'll talk about later on in this video in a little bit more detail. Essentially, the core driver of this fear is that you feel like you don't have control. You feel like you don't have control when you hire someone who's completely brand new to you compared to a friend or maybe a coworker who you've known for quite some time. But if you're thinking about the long term of a business and you growing your tutoring team, it's quite unlikely that you're only going to be able to hire from the pool of people you know. And if anything, if you restrict yourself to only the people you know, that is only a small subset of people. Imagine all the people out there who have the talent that you're looking for. If you only look for the people you know, you're dismissing thousands of other potential applicants that could be a really good fit for your business. So the key here is recognizing that there are elements that you are going to need to let go. You're going to need to let go of the idea that people come to your business only because of you. You're going to need to let go of the fact that you're hiring people that you don't know. But where you can gain control over is the processes that you have in your business, the onboarding systems that you have in your business, who you actually hire for your team, the way you interview, the way you vet out people. And so if you want specific direction on how to hire tutors for your team, I have actually given you this free gift over here on how to hire tutors for your team, where I include how to write a job description, what interview questions you need to ask, and these are the exact job descriptions and interview questions I use personally in Lisa Study Guides. I've interviewed over 100 tutors myself, and Lisa Study Guides as a company has interviewed over 500 tutors in our time. And so we've really refined this process specifically for tutoring businesses because we used it ourselves. So I invite you to download that and use that when you start off and start looking for your first tutor. Next is learning how to market your tutors. So if you're getting a long list of people who are asking you specifically to tutor people, but you don't have time anymore, you need to learn how to start shifting that narrative so that you can promote your tutors. So what I did was I said, thank you so much. I love the fact that you've reached out to me. I would love to tutor you, but unfortunately I am fully booked out. However, I do have a team of tutors that I have personally vetted myself. They teach in the ways that I teach, and I think that they would be a really great fit for you and your child. And just by saying something like that, I actually was able to convert majority of the leads that came my way. Because ultimately what you're doing here is you're putting your credentials on the line. You're saying to them, look, I've personally vetted them. I personally vouch for them. And so obviously this comes back to your hiring process and making sure that you hire the right people, and also later on what we'll talk about in this video, how you actually train them. But the fact that you've personally vetted them gives your lead trust to believe in you to give that tutor a try. And that's all they need to do. They just need to give the tutor a try. So if they weren't sure, what I would say is, why don't you give them a shot just for the first lesson? There are no contracts. You don't need to sign on for a long-term commitment. I want to make sure that the tutor is a right fit for you and your child. And if so, amazing. But if not, then we can absolutely discuss further on, what is it that wasn't quite the right fit, and I can reassign your child to another tutor once we can learn a little bit more about what exactly it is that you're after in these tutoring sessions. Now, this is something so simple you can do right now to start marketing your tutors to your waitlist of students or any new referrals that come your way. The other thing you want to do is you want to start reframing your online presence. So if you have a website, if you have social media, then start shifting the focus from you as the solo tutor, the face of the brand, to your team of tutors. So the languaging on your marketing copy needs to change. You want to start thinking about, what do you and your tutors stand for collectively? What do you and your tutors help students collectively achieve? This means that when people actually call you up and they're further along in the funnel, they've already had that experience of recognizing that, oh, it's not just Lisa, it's also a team of of tutors as well. And that primes them to recognize that they might get you, but they might also get another tutor as well, which makes your life easier when you're in those sales calls. So now that you've hired your talent, you have marketed them and helped them get a student, now it's time to start training your tutors. So one of the common fears a lot of my Tutor Boss clients have is, how do I actually get my tutors to be reliable? I'm the sole owner of this business, and so of course I'm going to be consistent with it. But how do I get my tutors to be consistent with their students? What if they sign on with me, but last minute they have exams, and so they push tutoring aside, and then suddenly student doesn't get any tutoring, suddenly I don't get any income. And honestly, this is a very valid fear, and this is something that I really had to deal with and go through and understand in order for me to realize the type of systems that I needed to implement as a result. So I remember I had one tutor who was constantly rescheduling her students, and it actually took me quite some time to realize that this was happening, because at that point in time, I was inexperienced. I was on my journey of hiring my fifth tutor at that time. And so I only actually realized when the parent called me and said, hey, we're not actually happy with this tutor. They're constantly rescheduling on us. We're not getting our tutoring. What is happening? Can you please help us? And so that was really the catalyst for me to recognize that just because you hire a tutor and you give them a student doesn't mean that your job is done, unfortunately. And so I remember feeling extremely stressed because not only did I have an unhappy customer, which I wasn't as familiar with dealing with, because up until that point, I was running this business by myself, and so I knew how to keep my customers happy. But now it was that sense of that loss of control of, oh my goodness, what is this tutor doing? And one, I had to have a conversation with the tutor, which felt very uncomfortable. And two, I had to have a difficult conversation with the parent as well. And so what I did was I chatted with the tutor, I gave them a call, and I remember just feeling so nervous about this. And if you're somebody who feels like you're a people pleaser, which I think a lot of us are actually when we're in the tutoring industry, because we love to give, we love to care for others, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but this is like that next growth journey for you as a business owner, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable conversations. And so I had a chat with her to ask, what's happening? Why are you rescheduling? And she said, it's because with uni, things are constantly moving in terms of the timetable, events are popping up, and I just find myself struggling with the schedule that I've got at the moment. I really appreciated actually having that open conversation with her, because it helped me build empathy for my tutor, and it helped me understand from her perspective why she was actually struggling, as opposed to just thinking, oh, my tutor's so unreliable, like they're terrible people. And so I actually worked with her to figure out how can we actually get your students to work with you at a time that's going to be more consistent for you, more steady for you, doesn't have as much fluctuations in terms of different events, different things popping up all of a sudden. And so we reassigned everybody to new days and new times. We condensed everybody into that same day on a weekend, and that actually started to work out a lot better for her. And so I had that same discussion with the parent, and I said, look, I've chatted to the tutor. I'm sorry that this has happened. I know that this is frustrating for you. What we've come to agree with is changing the time. I hope that this time works for you. Does it? Let's work on this together. And so the parent said, yes, this new time works for us. This new date works with us. And then I set the expectation. So I said to the parent, look, I want to make sure that this tutor is consistent with you. Please, I'm going to continue monitoring this over the next month and just making sure that your tutor is consistent. If you have any issues at all, please feel free to reach out. I always wanted them to recognize and understand that I was always going to be here for them, that although I was not there personally inside the sessions, as a business owner, I really cared, and I wanted to make sure that they had a great experience at our company. And so I communicated the same thing with the tutor as well. I said, hey, look, this is how the parent is feeling at the moment. We really need to make sure that we're consistent with these sessions. And if you're not consistent with them, you need to make sure that you communicate with them ahead of time that unfortunately, this session isn't going to happen. But if it doesn't happen, you need to reschedule immediately. Like book out a new time so they don't feel like they're left in the lurch, not knowing when that next session is. And so in doing so, I was able to get everybody on the same page. And that actually worked out really well for us. In the end, I didn't actually have any problems with her being consistent. And so that's the interesting hurdle that you're going to make as a business owner now that has a team. You're going to be a manager. And as a manager, your skill set is in your communication. The better of a manager you are, the better your communication skills are. So it's all about the soft skills here. And so in terms of training your tutors so that they are reliable, this conversation here is a last step of you getting in there yourself. We want to make sure that you put in systems in place ahead of time so that this situation doesn't even happen to begin with, right? It's all about setting expectations. So if you want them to be reliable, write up an SOP, write up a standard operating procedure where you tell them these are the different ways in which you can be reliable. 1, make sure that you book in times that you can be consistent with every single week. 2, communicate that with your students so that they can also be consistent with that every single week. 3, if you need to reschedule, this is what you need to do when you go and reschedule. Here's X, Y, Z. Follow these instructions so that everybody is on the same page. And so by just simply communicating something like that, you'll actually find that you resolve like 80% of your problems. They won't even come to you. That's when you know you're doing well as a business owner because you're not dealing with the same issues over and over again. That's a fun tip for you. If you feel like you're dealing with the same shit over and over again, that's a sign that that thing needs to be systemized because something isn't being solved. That's why it keeps coming back to you. But if it gets solved by your systems, then that's it. It will get diffused and it won't ever come to you. And that's when you know you've got success there. Now, speaking about reliability and speaking of consistency in lessons, we also want to make sure that we build an attractive culture at your tutoring business so that your tutors will actually keep coming back, so that your tutors feel dedicated to the work, so that your tutors feel motivated as well. Now, team culture is going to look different at every business, and a lot of it is spearheaded by you as the business owner. So when I think about team culture, the core things I think about are, how do I want my tutors to feel at this company? Do I want them to feel supported? Do I want them to feel motivated? Do I want them to feel inspired? And based on the core words I know I want them to feel, I build out systems that help to fuel that type of emotion. So for example, if I want them to feel supported, then I'm going to do all the things that I can do to make sure that they feel supported. The first thing that I did, that I implemented as soon as I hired my first tutor, was I just jumped into phone calls with them once a week to begin with, and then eventually once a month. And eventually it was like once every 6 months. And so that was a really great way to help them feel like, wow, I'm actually getting undivided attention from Lisa. She's actually taking time out of her day to spend time with me and making sure that I feel supported. That was one way. And then as I started collecting more data from my tutors, they would tell me on these phone calls things they were struggling with, things that they felt they needed help on. When I recognized there were certain patterns, I would then go and execute on those patterns. So the second example was that my tutors kept saying that they needed more resources. They felt like they were creating a lot of resources on their own, and they would have loved to have a little bit more support in terms of study guides, in terms of sample essays. And so I went out and I started looking for those things. I bought resources for them. I found sample essays for them. And the one hack that I did that was so amazing was that I got the tutors to pour in themselves. Where anytime a new tutor joined the company, I would just ask the tutor to pour in and give us their resources. And eventually over time, you can imagine with over 30 tutors on a team, you've just got gigabytes of resources in the Google Drive. Don't overcomplicate culture. Do what feels right to you. For me, like I would do things that were fun for me as well. Like I organized to meet up with my tutors at the end of each term, and we'd just go and do fun things. We'd go and do escape rooms. We'd play board games. We had a bubble tea night. It's just like things like that I personally knew that I would love to share, and I knew that the tutors would probably love as well. And they really did. So that's how I built my culture at Lisa Study Guides. And in building the culture, that's how I was able to have really high performing tutors who would be able to sign on lots of students, who would be consistent, and to have the tutors actually stick with us for years. Now, as you're growing your team, implementing systems, you're going to be a very busy business owner. The other thing I want you to think about, though, is balancing hiring with the leads that are coming in. So from my experience, you don't want to hire too many tutors and not be able to give them students as soon as you can. Now, one mistake tutoring business owners make is that you get so excited that you're growing your team, you've got all these leads coming in, and so you overcompensate. And so you go, well, look, I think I'm able to sign on 2 students each week, and so I'm going to hire 5 tutors. Now, one mistake a lot of tutoring business owners make, and I know because I've made this mistake before as well, is that you overcompensate. So you might come to a time where you actually think, I should hire a whole load of tutors so that I'm ready for any of the leads that come through. But what tends to happen is that you've hired too many tutors for the number of leads or students that you're able to actually sign on board. And so eventually what happens is that you have a bunch of tutors who are sitting there waiting to get students, but they're waiting for months on end. Now, this is not the experience you want your tutors to have. You want your tutors to sign up with you and ideally get a student straight away, because their motivation levels are going to stay on the up. It's going to feel good. You know, they're all primed. They're all excited about being a tutor with you. And so if you can give them a student straight away, that keeps that momentum going. But if you hire them and then suddenly everything just kind of stops on their end, things don't stop on your end because you're busy doing business stuff, right? But nothing happens for them. And they're just kind of sitting there, you know, just waiting around, checking their emails, hoping that they're getting a student. Their motivation levels are going to plateau and eventually die off. And their perception of you as a business is not going to be as strong as those who get a student straight away. This is a hard lesson that I had to learn. So I made the mistake of hiring 30 tutors in one go, and I'm going to do a full-blown video on this, on all of the mistakes I made during that time. But I did that because the year before I had literally grown from 5 tutors to 20 tutors that year. And so based on that trajectory, I was like, it's a no-brainer. I need to grow from 20 tutors to 50 tutors this year. Like, that's just where we're going. But I was inexperienced, and I actually didn't realize that that was not the trajectory that we were on. And so I had a lot of tutors that were really excited to get on board. But then once they got on board, I literally didn't give them students for weeks, if not months, some of them. And so what eventually happened here was that a lot of those tutors quit at the end of that year. And honestly, I'm not surprised. Like, that's like my punishment for not having done a good job for them. And I realized that I should have done a better job at balancing how many tutors I hire versus how many students I'm actually able to get in, and also communicating better. So I really should have explained to those people who I left in the dark, hey, like, we're almost there with these tutors. We just want to get these tutors filled out, and then next it's you. Or, hey, this is how we're going at the moment. Things are actually running a little bit slower than anticipated. I'm sorry that I promised you a student straight away. Like, that's what's not going to happen. And I take responsibility for that. I didn't mean to mislead you, but this is what I'm thinking now. This is where I think we will be in a few weeks' time, in a month's time. And maybe just giving them other opportunities in the business to potentially get them involved and keep them busy. So, for example, getting them involved in writing study guides for you, in creating resources, in doing lesson plans. These are all things you can do to keep your tutors motivated and happy. And when we have happy tutors, we have happy students. And when we have happy students, we get more referrals, and we're able to build out the number of students we have in our business that we look after. Now, eventually, as I scaled my team and we reached that 100 students mark, I realized that as the business owner, I could not be doing all of this stuff anymore. All these new systems that I'd implemented, calling the tutors, finding them resources, dealing with new customer inquiries, dealing with potentially upset customers, all of that. It just became way too much. And so the thing that really helped me get to 100 students and push past it was honestly onboarding a VA or an assistant, getting a right-hand person to help support me in the everyday tasks. We're talking about helping me with emails, helping me with invoices, helping me with dealing with customer inquiries, helping me with onboard tutors, literally anything and everything. I offloaded what I could to my assistant. So just know that at some point in time, yes, you're busy now, probably because you're ready to hire a tutor, but eventually you're going to be even busier because you're managing all the tutors and you will need help managing your tutors as well. Now, you being a solo tutor to you potentially having 100 students that you look after in your tutoring business is only really going to happen if you're okay with starting to let go of some of the tutoring. So this was something that I know I cling on to for a really long time. I was really proud of what I had built as a tutor, and I loved tutoring, and I got so much fulfillment from it. And at the same time, I really liked building a business. And I think it came to a point where I realized I just cannot do both at the capacity that I'm doing both. And so recognizing that at some point you're going to need to start letting go of the number of hours you're doing for tutoring. And this is going to look different depending on what it is about tutoring you personally value. So for some of you, you might realize that you're at a point right now where you're happy with the number of students you have, the number of tutoring hours you're currently doing. You can't add any more, but what you do have space to add more is starting to actually grow the business itself and starting to hire tutors. Some of you may be past the brink of burnout and you're realizing, okay, I thought I could take on this many number of tutoring hours. I literally had this conversation with one of my clients yesterday, and he's realized, like, I don't think I can keep going. Like, I need to offload some of these students. And how do I do that though? Like, how do I communicate with these students that I'm not going to be the one to be tutoring them anymore? And it's fair. It's a tough conversation to have, especially if you have built a connection with these students. And so my tip here is, if you're realizing that you do need to offload some of your students to tutors that you've hired, the way that I'd approach it is, have a think about the students who you feel really connected to and you really love working with them. They're your dream clients. They're probably the ones that you want to keep. Now, for the clients who maybe aren't as much of a perfect fit for you and your tutoring, if maybe they're a bit newer, so they don't have as strong of a connection with you, those are probably the clients that I would be more comfortable with passing off to a different tutor. It's also handy if those students are looking for more tutoring hours. You can say that I am unfortunately not available to do that, but I do have tutors who can help you with those additional hours. And maybe if they're looking for other subjects that you might not personally teach, but maybe that your tutors teach. And so in terms of how the conversation would go, I am a big believer in honesty. I am a big believer in just being open, because I truly believe that that's how you get everybody on the same page. And that's how you personally feel good about building your business. And so I would say something along the lines of, hey, I really appreciate that you signed up to tutoring with me. I know that we've been tutoring for about a month now. I have to be really honest with you. Unfortunately, when it comes to my schedule, I do feel like I'm getting quite stretched thin. And whilst I would absolutely love to continue tutoring you, I'm just concerned, take it back to yourself, that I'm not going to show up as 100% of what I know I can give you. And I think that for you, that is what you deserve. Put it on them as well, like shape it in terms of how they're going to benefit if they get a different tutor. So, the whole, like, it's not you, it's me. You're doing that essentially. And so you'd say something along the lines of, like, if you're open to it, honestly, like, I would love to be able to reassign you to a different tutor. They would be somebody that I have fully vetted out and that I have full belief in. And I genuinely wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think that you would be better off as a result. So having a conversation like that, I feel like, even me just saying it now, like, I feel great about saying something like that. So figure out what's going to feel good to you in terms of when you communicate, because if you approach difficult conversations in that way, you will always walk away knowing that you did your best rather than blaming yourself if they say, nope, I don't want that. I want to leave your business. Like if the scenario doesn't go in the way that you ideally would like it to go, at least you know that you've done your very best and you've put in your 100% in that conversation. And in my case, I was tutoring 30 students in the beginning of when I started hiring tutors. I worked with those 30 students for the remainder of the year because I had quit my pharmacy career. So I was doing full-time tutoring anyway, so I actually had the capacity to do so. But eventually over the following few years, I started to reduce that number down. So I eventually dropped down to 20. I eventually dropped down to 10. I eventually dropped down to only having a couple of students who had been with me since they were in year 7 all the way through to year 12. And that's how I eventually let go and really fully stepped in to being the CEO of my business. And so if you're ready to leap into this new chapter of your tutoring business, this is a friendly reminder. Go download that free gift that I have for you on how to hire tutors for your team. It's going to give you that in-depth step-by-step on the exact questions that you need to ask so that you know how to vet out your tutors to be a good fit for your company. And you can see now why that is so important. If you've reached all the way until the end of this video, I would love for you to comment, where are you at in your tutoring business right now? What are the fears that you're currently facing? And I hope that in today's video, I've been able to address some of those common fears that tutors like yourself are experiencing before taking that leap into the next chapter of hiring a team. Last week, I also released this video. Here are 3 signs that you're ready to hire your first tutor. So this goes into more detail to show you if you're ready to take that next leap. So I encourage you to go watch that if you haven't already. Otherwise, I can't wait to see you all in my next video where I talk about how to build a business so that tutors love working for you. I'll see you then. Bye.